Hey everyone, it's Donna Cravata, and we are back with another Real 50 Over 50 interview. And today we have Kim DeYoung. And Kim is a choice coach and author of the Book of Choice and the host of The Voice of Choice, which is a podcast. And her zone of genius is helping thoughtful people make intentional choices that allow them to live more examined lives. By making conscious choices, they become who they want to be. And I know Kim for a very long time. And this is her book, and you can see there's little tabs there. Kim and I met probably 10 or 12 years ago when she became the mother of my launch.
I remember that day well. That was a
Yeah,
meaningful day for me,
that
yes.
was a meaningful day. We were at an event together, and I was launching the total social PR system that fell apart the first time somebody purchased it. And I needed to rebuild it, and my confidence was kind of had a hole punched through it, and Kim was she was having a day of her own that was kind of not the best, and we just kind of connected there and, got to know each other, and I realized that the skill set that she had was what I needed to, revitalize my confidence in all of the work that I've done to create that program, and she needed me to hire her. She needed to be needed. So she became the mother of my launch that day, and, we've been fast friends, colleagues, clients of each other's ever since.
So good, so good.
So, the floor is yours, my friend. What do you wanna talk about?
It's funny, you think about, like, the power of connection and that fateful day of you and I meeting and what has transpired, in this decade of us. And, how we've been there for each other, as you said, it's so many levels. We've been each other's clients, we've been each other's friends, we've been each other's colleagues, we've connected each other to people. You're my person. You're the one I want to go to when I need support for anything that I'm going through. And, I'm blessed that I chose to go to that event and all that evolved. And I'm thrilled watching the work that you're doing with this. Talk about a choice, the choice that you've made to step into doing this work, the choice that you've made to interview all these women, to engage in all these dialogues, to see where this is going. I mean, the power of what this will be is so amazing, both to be a part of as now someone involved in this with you, but also to observe as your friend, like cheering you on in the background, like watching all the things that you're doing. It's beautiful.
Thank you. Yeah, it wasn't really a choice. It was more
Everything's,
like a smack in the back of the head, like, "Hey, this is yours. Step it up."
but here's the thing, everything is a choice. You could have said no. You
Yeah,
could have not acknowledged it. So you chose to step in, and there's
yeah.
the power.
Yeah, and when the first interview canceled a half an hour before we were going live, 10 years ago, I would have taken that as a sign as this is wrong, I shouldn't do this. And now because, I've grown up and I was just like, "Okay, so there's that. What are we gonna do with it?"
It's so funny just even having you mention the sign. I am the biggest believer in the signs, but I'm also the believer in, like, okay, sometimes crap just happens and we must push through it.
Yeah,
And, regardless, because it is going to happen. And how are we moving through and doing what we want to do, especially if it really matters to us?
exactly, exactly. So let's let's start with a little bit of what happened when you turned 50. And we're the same age, so
Yeah.
we've been at this for the exact amount of time.
We have, 50 was an important year for me for a bunch of reasons emotionally. Interestingly, I began my book with the story of choosing to end my relationship with my mother, which is actually when you and I ended. And it was right before my 50th that my mother and I had a beautiful reconciliation. And the process of the work I do is actually one of the things that supported and fostered that. And as I was turning 50 with no plans of what to do, I was single at the time. My mom said to me, "Would you like to take a trip with me and your dad?" And I said yes so quickly. Now, that never would have happened had she and I been in that prior funky place. So that is this very important moment for me of I said yes to something that that was so meaningful. So there I am now on a trip with my parents, embarking on a decade that I think is a big deal. I think
Mhm.
50 is a really big deal. It's sort of the statement of, I stand in what I stand for. I'm not really caring what other people think. That this is my time to figure my stuff out.
Mm.
And as you and I are coming to the end of our 50s, becomes even a new place as we look at like, okay, what may that next chapter really be? That sort of um, thought and owning it. And my world has changed drastically since 50. The work that you hired me for, that launch work, which I love and I'm very good at, is zone of excellence work. And I really made the decision around 50, but even more specifically now, it was like no more zone of excellence. I am focusing all on zone of genius.
Yeah,
Like that is how I want to live my life. That is the key thing.
I'm with you 100%. Yeah, because like a year and a half ago, I just kind of stopped and I said no to all the things I no longer wanted to do. And, my bank account isn't very happy with me at the moment, but that'll change. That'll change. And like this lights me up.
Yeah.
The other work that I'm doing lights me up. And I forget, I forget to like, you know, go into my bedroom to go to sleep. Because it feels important and it feels like it needs to be done now, and I'm sure you're feeling the same thing.
I actually the work that I'm doing around the conversation of choice, which is conversations that I have with people of all ages. Again, it began about a decade ago, but I feel like I was gifted with the best message to have conversations about because everybody is making a choice all the time, from our kids to us to our elderly friends, whomever. And, the choices may change depending on what stage of life we're in. But the fact that I was, kind of gifted this content to talk about in a very beautiful way, which the story, and I'm happy to
Mhm.
share. I feel like the luckiest person, because honestly, there's nothing more pleasurable for me than engaging in a conversation with somebody about a choice they've either made or want to make, because there's always something valuable in that conversation that they gather from themselves.
Do you wanna share a little bit about how this all started?
Oh, absolutely. I'd love to. It's funny. So right after you and I met, I was hosting an event unrelated to what we were doing, and I was interviewed for that event. And the answer to a question that I was asked was, what happens as we make a choice and begin to take action? How does our life unfold? And I left that interview thinking, what does happen? And that caused me to actually go back to the day that you and I met. That was a pivotal choice. The choice to attend the event where you and I met was very meaningful to me. So I began to look at that choice, and I'm a visual person, so I was using a mind mapping software, and I took that moment of I chose to go to that event. From that event I met you. From you probably introduced me to a handful of other people. From those people, other opportunities. And then I'm looking on this one piece of paper at an 18-month window of like all that came into my life from that choice to go to the event where I met you. And it was showing that piece of paper to one friend who said, will you do one for me? And that became a year of would I do it for many people? And so in 1 year, exploring the choices of 29 people without a process,
Mhm.
what I had was a deep curiosity and a desire to connect. And in that experience was having such rich conversations with people where I was giving them a new perspective on how to look at their choice. And at the end of the year, that's when I realized like I was sitting on something very interesting because I had had so many interesting conversations. It was like,
Mhm.
okay, Kim, you're meant to do something with this.
Yeah.
Like, take a breather. How do I process all that came out of all of those conversations to begin to make sense of it? And that's when I knew that there was a book in me, but I'm not a writer. I'd never written before like that. And so the journey began of how do I take all that I know and craft it into a book. So, and that in itself was a 10-year journey of doing that. I mean, the book just launched in June of this year, and it was quite a process to get it out into the world.
Yeah, well, the book had many iterations
Yes,
too.
yes. And interesting, one of the key iterations, that map that I shared with you, a couple of years into the process, an editor of mine said, Kim, are you going to teach your mapping process to others? Which had never even crossed my mind. I thought this is just this thing I do in the background. It's a way that I organize information. Never did I think of sharing it. But I loved her request. So I had to sort of watch how it is that I do what I do so I could
Mm.
share it. And thus, that was a piece of the book. But then again, a couple of years later, I thought of pulling the mapping because I thought maybe it's just too complex. And a coach of mine said to me, no, you must keep it. It is your differentiating factor, but you need to make it simple. You need to give people, to wade them into the waters, to, give them a vocabulary of what I'm teaching so that they can own it, so they can do it, so they can practice, so that it becomes something that they do.
And they
And
need this much off the top. They don't need all of it.
exactly, exactly. And, interestingly, where I happen to be even right now today, I am in the fifth of six classes where I'm taking that choice mapping content that I share in the book, and I'm taking a group of students deeper so that they can take what they've learned in the book and now learn how to even apply it at a deeper, more personal level. So I've always envisioned that mapping, for any of you, and I'm sure you know it, are very familiar with Julia Cameron's work of and her morning pages. And I know I began morning pages, 30 years ago. I loved it. I loved getting up. I loved writing my 3 pages. And for 30 years, I've started and stopped that process probably 20 times. I
Mhm.
do it, I stop. I do it, I stop. And I have a vision that mapping will be a similar process for others. It'll be that tool that they come to when they want to look at a choice with depth, and they're going to do it. And then they're going to forget about it like we do. And then they're going to be like, wait, I've got another choice. Let me go find that book again. Let me go remember what that woman said. And they're going to do it again. And they'll come back and forth to it because it is a process that is always there for you. It's like a good friend waiting to support you to dig deep. It's a self-discovery tool.
Yeah, and anything that requires you to dig deep is something that you have to be prepared for, and there's always another layer.
Yeah.
So even though you've done it, it worked, you like it, then you go to do it one day and all this is all subconsciously happening. You realize that like, "Oh, like I'm not here for this today, like this isn't gonna work," and you put it aside, and then it could be 3, 6, 9 months, a year later that you pick it up again.
Yeah.
Because you have to be ready. You have to be ready to do that excavation.
That's exactly what it is. It's like this deep dive into you, understanding either why you made a choice or why you want to make a choice.
Yeah, yeah. So, I know you, but what I did this morning was I pretended I didn't, and I went to your website, and I let things jump out at me. So one of the things that jumped out at me was the impact of decision fatigue. So can we talk about that a little bit? Like, what happens
Yeah. You
when
know, I think,
oh,
there's a statistic that every day we make 35,000 choices. And these could be the choice of, am I wearing the red shirt, the blue shirt, eating eggs, or a smoothie? I mean, it's the combination of all of it. But the truth is, we do have many choices to make. And if we, in our overwhelm of the breadth of choices to make, get overwhelmed, your life kind of halts. So you essentially become your own bottleneck. And
mhm,
so it becomes the question of like, how do you not get bombarded by the breadth of decisions? And, one thing I often say to people is to certainly not let the smaller ones get in your way. Like just have the eggs, put on the purple shirt. You know what I mean? Like get over that part because the bigger ones are yet to come. And, but it is a real thing. And I think there are certain personality types of people that get affected by it more, that maybe get more overwhelmed
mhm,
quickly. But I think it's a very real process. Like we live in a world where there's a lot asked of us and there are a lot of decisions to make. And yet, the real truth is like the minute you stop making them, like now they really pile on. And now you just feel the weight. And that's where anxiety and sleeplessness and all of that starts to come in.
Okay. And, is that where people get stuck?
People get stuck for so many reasons. That is certainly a reason. People may get stuck because they're an avoidant personality and, they just rather put their head in the sand. People may get stuck because they're indecisive and they're scared to make a choice. There are many reasons that
Mm,
cause people to get stuck. But getting stuck is a real thing. The thing is, we all have to make decisions. We've got
mhm.
our personal decisions, we've got professional decisions, we've got relationship decisions. And when we're stuck, I mean, it just adds to the overwhelm. It's like this uncomfortable cycle that keeps on happening.
So when you are either doing this for yourself or working with a client, like, how do you use this system, like looking backward while looking forward, while staying in the present to get out of that place of being stuck?
One of the first things I will do with a client is number one, do you want to look back? Do you want to look forward? It's like, so there's kind of a simple yes, no decision. I would say the bulk of my clients at this time want to look forward. It's like, what is a choice that I am making? Then one of the key questions I always ask is, why does that choice matter? And once we kind of ground in, because if you can't answer that, why bother making the choice?
Yeah.
But once you know why it matters, you have to really ask yourself what could hold you back. And that's where fears, limiting beliefs, all
Mhm.
of that stuff come in. And you need to own it. You
Yeah.
need to acknowledge, like, what are those things that could get in my way of stepping into that choice. So that is often deep work. And I teach it in the book, like how to ask yourself the questions to go deeper. Certainly when I work with people privately, my intuition takes over and we go there and we go there. Um, Something that's very interesting, though, is that one of the other key questions that I'll have people look at is not only, what could hold you back from that choice, but what gets you excited as
Yeah.
you think about that choice. And even though you may have deep fear, if what is exciting and you feel thrilled about it, that may pull you out of the things that are holding you back. I really often think about it like the fears are pulling you into the past, the
Mhm.
possibility is pulling you into the future. And if you can really, some of the fears may be very, very legitimate, and others you may say, you know what, I'm not going to let that get in my way. Like I'm going to move forth with this because it matters so much, and I see what's
Mhm.
possible on the other side.
And even if they are legitimate, this is that invitation, that opportunity to, move past them and,
Look at
say
you.
goodbye.
I'm going to turn the tables on you. Look at what this work that you're doing. You're going to say you didn't make a choice to do this program, but you did. And in doing it, I'm sure if you and I were to dive deep into it, which we actually have not, I'm sure there are many fears as to why, they could have gotten in your way of doing this. But look at you. You're doing it.
You know what?
So,
I didn't really have a lot of fear about this. The only and I wouldn't say it's a fear. Um, I just want to be cautious that I'm able to, because it feels so much bigger than me. It is so much bigger than me. I wanna make sure that whatever it is that I'm doing, I have the capacity to support it.
but that's a perfect example because that could manifest into a fear to say, here's this thing I want. It is huge. Can I do it? Do I have the capability, the resources, the time, whatever? But you know what? I see what this has the potential to be. I am not letting that get in my way. So you sort of bypassed it quickly because that's a bit of your personality. You're not going to get held back, but others may.
Yeah,
But the distinction of what happened for you is you really saw what was possible. That's why you have persevered and you are making this happen.
yeah, and honestly, it's come in waves. I really see it now. So watch out, folks, it's coming. We are just getting started. Um, I love this conversation. So now You have a quiz on your website. Tell us about the decision-making quiz, and this is the link to go sign up for it. But I
Yeah.
think that this I mean, I'm not a big fan of quizzes. I love this one.
This was an important quiz to create, and it took me, I mean, it probably took me 2 months to craft the
It's
content
it's
because I didn't want it to be a Cosmo quiz. I really wanted it to be a valuable quiz that when someone takes it, they learn something. So the gist of what this quiz is about is how to learn what type of decision maker you are. And, I crafted 5 different types of buckets in terms of the types. But when you assess that, you learn like, okay, these are the strengths of my type, and these are the opportunities for growth.
yes.
So that was really the key thing. And it's been fun seeing the results come in and having conversations with people that have taken it to say, is that how you perceived yourself? Or did you see yourself differently? Or I recently had a husband and a wife take it, which was very interesting of like what they were learning about each other from that perspective. I'll tell you one interesting thing that I learned that I hadn't really thought about prior to putting the quiz together is that one of the key types is, and this is me, the rhino, the one who moves forward very quickly, very intuitive based, and just moves forward. Versus 3 of the types are very methodical. They take in a lot of information, they deliberate. But the real distinction between the 3 is really their level of confidence in terms of how they move forward. One of the types is like, okay, I'm going to gather, gather, gather. And then once I've made my decision, I am moving forth. One of the other types is like, I'm gathering, but I'm still a little avoidant. I'm like the ostrich, sticking my head in the sand. And one of the other ones, although they've gathered, they're so scared of making the wrong choice that they almost make no choice. So that was just an interesting insight that I hadn't had prior, but as I was really speaking with people afterwards, I've just learned so much from it. So it's a very valuable quiz, and I really hope that people who take it learn something about themselves and, apply what they can as far as their opportunities for growth.
Yeah, you can tell that you put a lot of effort and time and thought into creating it, and, it almost felt it almost felt like the results almost felt like Colby to me.
Mm, interesting.
Yeah, it was accurate. I'm an elephant.
So that means you are the one who really deliberates, yet when you deliberate, you move forth with confidence.
Yeah,
Like you're sort of steadfast, which is,
yeah.
yeah,
I'm a researcher. I
yeah.
wanna know all the things, and then I'll make a decision, and I
Hmm.
don't need anybody's to really weigh in with me. I make my own
Yeah.
decisions.
Yeah.
Yeah,
And that's interesting. One of the other types is more the collaborator.
mm,
They love gathering from other people to support them.
yeah, I don't.
Yeah. It's funny. I was in a meeting just the other day, and one of the women in the meeting was very funny. I asked her something, and in the asking, I was essentially asking her to make a decision on the spot. She's like, "Oh no, I don't do that." She's like, "I need to really think about it and think about," like she said, "I think about things 3 times before I make the decision." I was like,
Mhm.
"Okay, you are an elephant." It was very clear. It was fascinating just watching it in life. She was not jumping in quickly to say, whatever it was.
It's just brilliant, and, the thing I really love about it too is that, the whole system, like, you have this whole choice-making system, which I wanna talk a little bit more about, but, you know, this is for everyone. I mean, and I know that you've done work with your son and his friends. Can you talk a little bit about that?
That has been magic. So my middle son is now 24, 2.5 years out of college, and he's got a really special group of friends. And since they graduated college, I have been invited into their world to talk with them about their choices. And what's fascinating is, we're all always navigating versions of personal, professional relationship choices, but, these young men are newer to it.
Yeah.
So to be going there with them and to having the conversations of just as an example, we had a gorgeous talk a few months ago about relationships and the choices to be in relationship, to leave relationship, to get over a breakup in a relationship, and to own the qualities of how they showed up as they made those choices, and to have conversations about how are you using that information as you make future choices. I had to pinch myself. I thought, oh my God, these young, gorgeous men are so evolved. Certainly not the 24-year-old men I knew back in my day.
No, no.
And, just realizing like if they have a forum to have that conversation. And, at the root, this is an interesting thing. When I was writing my book, someone said to me, if you had to summarize in one sentence, what's the purpose of your book?
Mhm.
The purpose of my book is to help people to make thoughtful, intentional choices so that they live a more examined life. And I didn't know about that at 24. And imagine if all of our kids coming out of college, stepping into the world, had that thinking and that ability to do that. I mean, it's life changing.
It
It
is.
really is life changing.
And it's not just at that stage of life. I mean, we're making choices and reinventing ourselves throughout life. I mean, just with this project alone, every woman that I've spoken to has reinvented in midlife,
Mhm.
every single one. And I know we're just, we're a drop in the bucket. So, this is such a amazing skill to have, to be able to do for yourself, to be able to do for the people around you. It's a
Yeah,
parenting skill, it's a leadership skill, it's a self-leadership skill. It's a mentoring skill. It's a teaching skill. I mean, like in any capacity where
yeah,
you're working with people, it's a way to kind of elevate the conversation, not just the conversation, but whatever it is that you're doing together, by having this understanding of choices and how we could make these choices individually and collectively, it can change so many things.
yeah. And you're interesting speaking about reinvention. I mean, that happens to be just a personal passion and interest of mine. I'm so drawn to the person who had done one thing and is now choosing to do another, whether, it's retirement, whether it's switching careers, whether it's moving into a new phase of life, but that real consciousness of I choose to move away from this and into this, and
Yeah.
what is involved in that. And that is very thrilling. And truly, that can happen at any stage of your life.
Mhm. Yeah, it really can. And, one thing just came to me, like, how many people do you know switch direction in college? And, we were shamed for that.
Yeah.
We were shamed for, like, investing in something and then making another choice. Like, I worked in a law firm for years. You made partner after 7 years or you didn't. And there was this pattern, because I worked there for so long, I got to see the patterns. But there was this pattern between, like, the 5th and 6th year of being an associate, where there was, like, a percentage of attorneys that left because they realized what that last push that they were gonna need to do to make partner was
Mhm.
nothing that
Not
they
what they
wanted to
wanted.
do. And, they went to law school, they still had student loans, they had this job where they had the potential to make a lot of money, but you really do sign a deal with the devil. And
Mhm.
they weren't ready to do that, and I remember this one guy, he was brilliant, and he left, and, like, in between that 5th and 6th year, and he moved to Paris and became a pastry chef.
I love when I hear those examples of choices. Those types of choices take such courage,
Yes.
to leave behind the safe world, the
Yeah.
world where your money, et cetera, but you're miserable. And it's kind of, and you see versions of it, whether it's the choice to walk away from getting married, the choice to leave a job that pays well but is life sucking,
Mhm.
all of those examples. And that, just to dig into that and to realize like this is where you make the choice for your life. There are going to be other people in your life who may not agree with you, yet whose life is it? It's about standing in your strength to do what you need to do.
Mhm. It's amazing. So tell us a little bit about your system and how it works. We just got a couple of minutes left.
Yeah. So the choice mapping is the system that you're referring to. And in it, and I have created three types of maps that people can use. One is a people map, that allows you to look at how you know who you know, which is a beautiful map from a place of gratitude. An unfolding map is an opportunity to look at how things grow through your life chronologically. So, as an example, the map I shared with you at the beginning, where I met you, and from you, I met people and people and people. And now, over a window of time, all of this has come into my life. The map I do most often with people, as you know, when they are my clients and then I'm teaching about, is something called an exploration map. And that is really a map of deep inquiry. And you can go as deep as you want. You can keep it at a superficial level, answering a handful of questions, or you can go and keep adding to it and really digging into the details of your thoughts, what's getting in your way, all of it. I find at the root, an exploration map is a beautiful tool for self-discovery and for truly becoming your own coach. It's like, as you're engaging in this question and answer dialogue with yourself, going there, you're learning more. You're like pulling back information, and so that you can make the decision that's right for you. You can get to the bottom of what you need. I think what I love about mapping is it's just always there for you. It's like a good trusted tool that on the surface is simple, but truly it's complex in terms of how deep you want to go. And that's, of course, your choice. But it's always there waiting for you, if you want to go on that journey.
It's amazing. Yeah, and we've done several maps together over the years, and I go back to them and I look because you forget where you were, you forget what you
Yeah.
did, and it's a really good tool for that too because that's part of the work that I do with clients is like I help them reconnect to their story, and that really helps to reconnect to my own story because it's like, what did I do 5 years ago or 3 years ago or 8 years ago? I don't need every bit of it, but I need a milestone. Like, what did I really care about then? That's what I want to know. Like, what was really important to me then? Because that was the thing that brought me to where I am now. Those milestones, those things that like you were really focused on are the things that bring you to where you are. And when you can incorporate that into your marketing and your messaging and your communications, that's what people really connect with.
Yeah. Yeah. You're so right. I mean, I began creating maps a decade ago, and I still go back to a handful of them that when
Mhm.
I read the words, it's like I'm transported back to this place. And honestly, there's still a lot of truth in
Yes.
those words when I go back, even at a later date, and they're still really helpful.
Okay, so the last thing I want to talk to you about, you just hit on a word, truth. Where does that fit into all of this?
It's, at the root, I believe a map is an opportunity to capture your truth for where you are in a moment. So if let's just imagine you've chose to invest, 10, 20 minutes into mapping, for example. And in that you are answering a bunch of questions and you are capturing your answers. And let's imagine you go back to it tomorrow and you look at your answers and you think, that doesn't really resonate with me. And you tweak the words a bit and you add a little bit. Maybe you come back the following day and you work with the words of this map so that they really ring true. That's the power. And now you have on one piece of paper a real clear bit of information that's telling you, like, what is going on around this choice? Like, how do I step into it? And your words, because you've worked with them and you've come back and come back, and this doesn't have to be lots of time, these can be 5-minute iterations. You are honing in on your truth and what matters to you. It's unbelievably powerful.
And it reflects back to you from the paper.
Yeah. Yeah.
Amazing. So, have a last bit of wisdom you'd like to share? Because it is the wisdom revolution.
Um, I think if I was going to share one thing, it is that we each know what is best for us. If we can get underneath, we often think we need to ask others for advice and for stuff, but if you're really willing to get quiet with yourself and have the honest conversations, you have your answers. It's just taking the time to do it yourself.
And ripping off that Band-Aid. I believe that's true too.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you, Kim.
Thank
Everybody go out and get Kim's book, The Book of Choice. Um, listen to her podcast, check out her website, kimdeyoung.com. Everything is there. She's incredible. She's amazing. I know because she's a dear, dear friend for many years. So I know, I know everything there is to know. And it's true. So go check her out and come back next week and for another interview. And we're going to also start having monthly wisdom panels because the one panel that we did have was such a hit. So keep an eye out for those. We'll be sharing about them very soon, and a couple of other things that are coming up as well because this project is growing. We've got lots to say, and we have a lot to share. So stay tuned, connect with Kim, and we'll be back next week.
Bye, everyone.